Hi, and welcome to this special Best of compilation episode of the Trumpet Gurus Hang. 2021 had its fair share of memorable moments, and probably some we'd all simply love to forget. 2021 was the second year of production of the Trumpet Gurus Hang, and I've been very fortunate to have some very, very special guests who've openly shared their unique insights and experiences. And as a result of all of that great conversation, our audience has grown significantly. And for that, I am extremely grateful. Now, my guests have talked about their careers, their influences, and their philosophies. But you know that anytime two trumpet players get together, the topic of conversation will eventually get to our most beloved of topics, gear. Let's face it, we're all gearheads. And I would be doing you, my faithful audience, a huge disservice by not talking gear with my guests. Am I right? But of course, by now, you should know that I'm not going to approach this topic in the traditional way. I believe that it's less important what gear someone plays than why they play it. And just like every player has their individual preference for their gear, every player has a unique process for evaluating gear for themselves or for their students. So that's why I decided to make this a recurring segment of the Trumpet Gurus Hang, to give you some unique ways to think about the role of gear, as well as some practical tips to help you make a more informed decision when you buy that next horn or mouthpiece. And speaking of buying new mouthpieces, mid-year, the Geared Up segment became sponsored by my friend Doug McVeigh of Venture Mouthpieces. Venture has revolutionized the way we trumpet players can choose, design, and purchase our mouthpieces, thanks to their VenCAD software. Venture makes it easier for students and amateurs to do what the high-profile professionals do, and that's create a custom mouthpiece. And while many manufacturers will build a custom piece for you, only VenCAD allows you to take complete control of the design process. And if you don't need a custom piece, Venture's fit kits give you an easy and affordable way to find your next mouthpiece. So go to venture.mp to check out all their offerings and use the code TrumpetGurus21 at checkout to save 10% off your order. So let's start off our gear exploration with my first geared up guest, the one and only Eric Miyashiro.
You know, you have to remember there are three things involved: the horn, the mouthpiece, and the player. And those three elements needs to be in balance. So you really have to be careful of when you're trying out new horns. Not to try out horns and trust that feeling you're gonna get in a music store or at the at the shop, the custom shop, the mouthpiece shop, and whatnot. So spend time, take your time. Um, you know about if you can go to the music store maybe 3 times on a different day with a different set of mind and different set of chops, and try them out and really see how that's going to work out. Um, and don't let the size or don't let the measurements make you think like if the bore size is medium, your natural tendency say to feel is like there's going to be a lot of resistance, and if it says large bore, you're going to think that it's going to be you need a lot of air to fill that horn. No, that's not the way it really works. It's the combination of you, mouthpiece, and the horn. So don't let those numbers. We all kind of get too caught up with the sizes and things. you
Yeah.
know. So be careful with that, and don't have your friend come with you, and don't ask your friend, if this is sounds good to you, or and because your friend have a different taste in sound. It's not you, so don't let the sound, like I said earlier, it's your voice, and no matter what you change, it's gonna come back to you, that voice, unless you change that voice in your head. If you have a strong um goal or vision or an image that you want to sound like this, you're gonna get there. Your body's gonna be act, and you're gonna move there towards there, and but don't um let your friends or the store helper tell you, this sounds better than this. So take your time, and just go with your gut feeling, you know and keep the trying out uh, time that you spend on trying out different horns or different mouthpieces short. If you have a mouthpieces that you want to try out, and don't spend like half an hour playing them, because your body's going to unconsciously adjust to the mouthpiece, and even if it's not right for you, your body will make that adjustment, and it might not be right for you. So and I would say 5 minutes at the most, or even less than that, and just let your gut feeling, your first impression dictate what you're gonna choose. That's my take on suggestions about horns and equipments.
Very, very cool. Paul Barron.
Sure. Well, the first thing I would ask them is what type of music do you see yourself playing, or what do you mostly play? We could pick any percentage, but let's say 75% of the time, what kind of stuff do you play? Okay, well, let's talk about the gear that would best be suited for that. If you're going to be playing third trumpet in an orchestra, you're probably not going to play a 1S2 Colicchio and a jet tone or something, because it's not going to be the right tool for the job. That's not to say that there's not somebody out there that could make that sound beautiful and correct in that setting, but by and large, most of us couldn't do that. The same thing is if you're going to be playing in Earth, Wind, and Fire, you're probably not going to want to show up with a 1 1/4 Bach mouthpiece and a 37 heavyweight Bach trumpet and try and get through that gig. I don't know what Bobby Burns plays on, but and boy, if he plays on the equipment I just described, then forget what I just said. He's amazing. But by and large, there are certain conventions that, most people fit within. So I would just, ask them about this style of music. And then it also comes down to shoe size, somebody, I've mentioned Byron Stripling, can play a 1.5 C and play lead. He's got much more fleshy chops than I do. I've got fleshier chops than other people that might be able to fit into something really shallow, and I can't make a sound out of it. So there would be that, finding your shoe size, finding the mouthpiece that you can consistently get a vibration from the bottom of your range to the top of your range without any dropouts, or without having to shift from top to bottom and move the mouthpiece around. You want it to be able to flow all the way through your range. So I would say get something that would allow you to be able to do that, that doesn't impede your vibration. Once you get the shoe size, I think then it's a matter of tailoring it to the sound that you want to get. A 5 rim doesn't mean you're going to get a certain sound. It just means that it feels a certain way on your chops. Then you can deal with the shallow or deep cup. You can deal with the back bore and the throat size. There's so many other things. And as far as the trumpet, I would say, figure out what kind of sound you want to have, and just try so many different trumpets, and don't be concerned about whatever that manufacturer stamped on the bill. It doesn't matter if it's a Blessing or a Monette or a Bach or a Colicchio or anything else. If it feels right to you, that's the right horn for you. So I hate to get vibed when I'm in a section or show up and somebody looks down there. Oh, you're playing a Colicchio, huh? Like that's not going to be able to blend. I do some work in the Seattle area doing recordings for, I don't know, video games. I don't even know most of these things, World of Warcraft and some things like that. And I get the blessing to sit next to Allen Vizzutti from time to time. And Allen is so cool. I mean, he'll look at that and he'll, oh, Colicchio, huh? And then we play and then everything's cool, So you can blend and play in tune and play the right style and on so many different things. So it's a matter of finding what's right for you.
Michael Bogart.
The first thing I would mention, if they're playing on a beginner model or intermediate model, or let's say they're playing on a beginner model and they're trying to justify the cost of a professional model versus an intermediate model, I would say go ahead and invest up. Think long term, think future, think you might be doing this for a while. Because you never know, you could get bit by the bug like me. So, if you're trying to make a decision between an intermediate model and professional model, say go ahead, spring, have the extra money and go ahead and spring for the professional model. Then I would look at, all right, what are they already playing? And what kind of success do they already have with the equipment that they have? And do they really need to make a change? Is it really necessary? And if it's something that they're really, really excited about, even if they, I can speak from personal experience. I might sound really, really good on some equipment, but it might get a little bit stagnant after a while. And maybe, something comes like Eric came out with his model trumpet. And I was like super, super excited about trying Eric's trumpet, and it kind of got me fired up again for the trumpet thing. And so maybe, this might be an opportunity, for a young musician to get fired up about their instrument. So yeah, I would look at what they're playing, what kind of success are they already having on their equipment now, and without making too drastic of a change in how their body and physiology is going to have to readjust, what can we get that player into that's next level? Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes
obviously. And I'm not trying to plug Yamaha, but they've been fantastic to me over the years, and I happen to think Bob Malone is one of the greatest minds as far as taking in the consideration and the input from artists and from other players, and being able to draw on that input and figure out ways to make whatever changes need to be made with the piece of brass tubing itself to be able to make that happen, to be able to make that a reality. And not necessarily, and again, let's talk about ego, not taking his own ego out of it and not saying, okay, you know what, this is my horn. If you don't like it, piss off.
Yeah.
But what does the artist want? What does the trumpet player want? What kind of sounds and colors do they want available to them? And how do I make this piece of inert brass material from the earth be able to create that sound that the artist is hearing in their head? And I happen to think Bob Malone is one of the best at doing that.
Yeah. Well, success speaks volume. Kiku Collins.
So I was really good friends with Lou Sola for a long, long, long time. When I was 15, I met him. And for anyone who knew Lou personally, he would have a minimum of 200 mouthpieces on him at all times. And he would switch mouthpiece for every note. I don't know how he did it, but he would just constantly switch stuff. When I first met him, there was a stack of trumpets up to the ceiling. I was like, what? Who needs all of this stuff? So there are people that clearly believe in that. I think that I would just get confused if I had different stuff. Oh, well, this is my TV mouthpiece, and this is my recording mouth. I'm kind of one of those people that thinks, whatever gear fits you, fits you. And so, I'm on commercial gear, which fits every setting that I play in, except for classical church stuff, that kind of stuff. Nobody has ever complained. Like, well, your horn is way too commercial for this. Oh, they keep calling me back. I don't know. Maybe it's because, I wear fun socks. I don't know. But I've never had a complaint,
Mm-hmm.
I don't play on any classical gear anymore. And that's how I grew up. And I feel so free. I feel like everything fits me. I never felt like, certain instruments or types of instruments fit me well.
Mm-hmm.
Even the cornet, I have a beautiful cornet, and I'm like, it's interesting and it's kind of fun to play, but I don't feel like myself in it. So I use it if there's a gig that calls for that specific vibe. So yeah, I'm really one of those people. You find a setup and you stick to it. I've never been successful in a shallow mouthpiece, and never say never. I'd like to continue to try and pursue something like that. And this is a good time to do that. But, I also, during this break, another thing that I kept quiet was I had seriously major oral surgery. And I'm still going through it. So I had to relearn how to play again. Cancer is the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
But I learned how to be a little more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
I learned, how to play on plastic teeth. That's a good skill set. And I'm not done with the process. So I'll have to learn again.
Yeah.
When I get the permanent stuff in, but we have bone growing very slowly right now. So I'm kind of waiting, but I haven't stopped anything. I'm just still forging ahead and, just like everything else, just figure it out.
Kevin Burns.
I will tell you that I'll probably, when I get back into the band, I'll go back to what I've been playing for a number of years since I got an aim and note. Most of my career, I probably played that 6310Z, and I did when I first got into note. And then I switched because, and this is part of that relationship thing with Brian. Like, not only we're playing, rehearsing, but we're going on tour together. We're hanging out, we're having dinner, we're having lunch, we're having drinks. We're we're just friends, and we talk trumpet, and we talk about what this or that. And so you kind of get really deep into a player's head like that in terms of his whole approach to the instrument. And I started listening to the reason why he played what he played. And he plays an old Con 36. And so I started keeping my eye out for just that old Con, just to see what it would feel like. And I discovered that I wasn't very in tune with the 36 or the 38, but one day I got a hold of an 8B. If you hold it up side by side, it looks the same shape and design as a 36. But the 36 is nickel plated, and the 8B is either lacquered or silver plated. And there may be some other changes, but they look like they'd have the old, like, kind of wide wrap. They look almost like the same horn, the same bell size. It's kind of small. But it had that old Con sound. There's something about that old Con sound. I don't know if it's the metal they used back then, the design factor, whatever, but in a big band, it particularly works well. If I were a studio player, I probably wouldn't be my horn because it's too specific. It's like this one core, like it's just like hits you in the chest. It's like this core to it. And that's what Brian sounds like. He's so efficient. He doesn't even look like he's working.
Yeah.
If you get in front of him, you just feel this punch. And And when I found that 8B, I was like, suddenly I felt like we were just like dialed in together, just like boom. Okay, I was like, I have to get this horn. It just sounds too good with Brian. And I was like, even at the expense of this may or may not be what I would play just by myself, but it sounds so good in the band that I'm gonna get this horn. And that was really when the music directors just couldn't tell who was playing lead. And it was a really good and mature choice on my part to just say what is going to sound the best in the band to support this amazing lead player. And so I've really gotten used to it. I love it. It just has a great sound. So that's been my horn. I've had a couple of versions of it. I played a lacquer one for a while, and then I found actually I don't want to throw Brian under the bus, but he accidentally damaged my first lacquered 8B. We were just talking in rehearsal, and he flipped around and knocked my horn into the trombone section, and it came up with a lead pipe looked like that. And so he was like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry," and he paid to get it fixed, but it just never played the same after that. But I kept looking out for another 8B, and I found one, but it was silver plate, but it felt basically the same. Mm-hmm. So it was that nice sound. So that's my horn. It's an 8B. It's an old con. And that's the reason why I play it. You know, sometimes you just, in this setting where you just get this opportunity to play in the same group every day, you just get to the point where you dial it in so finely. And getting that horn was like that next step of just making the perfect match for Brian's lead approach. And so.
James Morrison.
I think the main thing for me in gear is, and gear's important. Gear's important, and I have gear that I like to use, absolutely. And I don't want to play anything else. But it's the why of that and the attitude to that is this: I don't look to the gear to give me something. You know, people say things. What kind of sound does that horn have? I love to just hold the horn up and go, I don't know, it doesn't seem to have any sound at all. You know, yeah. No horn has a sound. But the way I treat the choice of gear and how you make decisions about what to play, whether it be all the aspects of your trumpet, you know, the of course the make, the model, the finish, the bell size, everything about it. All these choices, lead pipe, and then the mouthpiece. Man, go on there for years about mouthpieces. The thing is, it all has an effect. It's all important. But the effect I'm looking for is what makes it easiest, what wants to make the sound. So we know, for instance, if we get a certain bell on a trumpet, it'll want to be brighter, is the way I put it, than another one that wants to be darker. Now, I can make the dark one sound bright, and I can make the bright one sound darker. No problem at all. The thing is, I'll have to work at it because I'm trying to make that metal do something it doesn't naturally want to do. Right. So I don't choose the brighter bell to give me a brighter sound. I have a brighter sound. I bell fight me, so we're working together. So that it's easier for me to do what I'm going to do anyway. And if you give me a horrible trumpet, by that I mean, you know, like some real, like old student model from, I don't know, when student models weren't good, I'll play on it. And unless I tell you, most people in the room aren't going to notice the difference. But man, will I notice the difference. Right. Like, it'll be horrible, a horrible experience. I'll be working like crazy. And then give me my horn. I play a Shargle, and it's a signature model. It's a James Morrison Meister horn, they call it, and all that I've worked on with them and got it. And all we did to make that then was not to make a better trumpet, because what does that even mean? Someone would say, oh, I prefer this one, you know, and they'd be right. They do prefer that one. I made a trumpet, worked with Shargle to make a trumpet that in every aspect we possibly could, and we kept trying things and doing things, wanted, so that it almost seems like there's no trumpet. When I pick it up, I go, that's the sound I was going to make anyway, whether I had a trumpet or not. And so it's not fighting me at all. And so so the choice of gear then, when you try a different mouthpiece, don't go, gee, does this one make my sound like this or make it like that? It doesn't make anything. I always say, imagine the sound in your head. This is always important, but boy, it's important when you're trying gear. I see people pick up a horn and go, I'll try this one, and they blow it. And I say, stop, what are you doing? They go, I'm going to blow the horn and see what sound it makes. And I go, and in your head you want to make that sound. They go, well, then how will I tell whether it's the horn for me? I'll go, by how easy it is. but always make the sound. And so when they see me testing trumpets, I don't say to anyone in the room, how's that one sound? They all sound identical. But I know this one was easiest to do that on. That's the best one for me. And so with that approach, I don't get down this rabbit hole where I'm always looking for the horn or the mouthpiece or some bit of gear to give me something that I haven't already got. I'm looking for, if there's anything left in the gear that I've got where I go, I have to sort of push it a bit to make it do that. We'll go, well, okay, if there's a piece of gear that'll take that away. So I'm almost looking for the gear not to give me something. I'm making sure the gear's not taking anything away or standing in the way of what I want to do. And but to that extent, the gear's very important, and there's all those aspects to it. And I like the idea. I'm very aware of the placebo effect and how we, right. If you tell someone, try this mouthpiece, man, this one's really great for playing high, and give them a reason, they'll try it and they'll get an extra little bit of range out of it, and it may be identical to the one they were just playing. And so I love it when I know that a bit of gear is doing what I think it's doing or what it's supposed to do, because it did it before I was told what it's supposed to do. And the mouthpiece I use is a really good case in point. It's called an approdato, and it's also made by Jaudes. And they got this bright idea that, when you play buzz into a mouthpiece when it's in a trumpet, the mouthpiece itself vibrates. And if you put a sensor on the outside of it, just near it, in the air, a very sensitive one, it'll pick up those vibrations. You can look at them on an oscilloscope. So you're making the air vibrate either side of your mouthpiece, like all around it. That's wasted energy. So, of course, this is well known. So they started making heavier, fatter mouthpieces. Those mouthpieces, you can get like huge chunks of metal, and they vibrate less. So more of the energy is going through the horn, but they still vibrate. So it's like a soundproof room. All you're trying to do is stop vibrations getting in and out. You don't make the walls thicker. Everyone knows in a studio, you put a cavity. You put an inner wall and an outer wall, put a space between them, you'll stop the vibration, or largely stop the vibrations. If you could, and it's not practical with a building, you'd fill the cavity with water. That really, anything that does excite the first wall will never get the second wall going if there's water in between. So the approdato is a dual-walled mouthpiece. There's an inner mouthpiece and there's an outer casing, and it's filled with water. Wow. And that's how it works. Now, I know all that now. But when I got this parcel in the mail from Jaudes, try this new mouthpiece, no one told me any of this. I said, it's kind of fat looking. Okay. And I put it in. I didn't know what it was supposed to do. And I never read the instructions on anything. So I just played it. And I didn't notice suddenly I was better or it was easier. It felt good. So I played it. But after a couple of weeks, I had a trip. And coincidentally, it was to Austria, near Vienna, where Jaudes is based. And I had this concert. When I got there off this long flight from Australia, I took the horn out, I played, and I just had that edge missing. When you feel like, is there a bit of fluff stuck in my mouthpiece or my horn somewhere from the case? Or is there a dent? Did I get a dent on the flight that I can't see? That little thing when you get a dent maybe in the end of your tuning slide, it was just off. Right. I went, no. So I went to them and I said, there's something wrong with my horn. And they put a light down and they looked at this, we can't find anything wrong with the horn. And then Robert Jaudes, who was there, one of the brothers that runs the company, he shook the mouthpiece. He said, there's no water in your approdato. I said, there's no water in my what? He said, this is called an approdato. Didn't you read the thing we sent you? I said, no. He said, it would have come to you filled with water. I went, where? And he said, no, it screws apart. I didn't even know. He said, it's empty. He said, you must have not had it done up properly on the flight, and it's come out with the altitude. He went and filled it up, gave it back, said, try it now. And I played, and the horn was back. I said, well, that's a really good double-blind trial. Because I didn't even know what it was supposed to do. I didn't even know it was the mouthpiece. I just knew something was wrong. So this mouthpiece definitely makes a difference. But it was that kind of difference that only after I'd had it for a couple of weeks, when you took it away, I noticed. When I first played it, it just felt good. But once it was not there and the water was not there, I went, I've just lost a tiny little bit of power or something here. I don't know why. So that kind of gear testing I love, where I don't know what it's supposed to do, and yet I can feel something. And if someone changes it without me knowing, and I notice it, then I know it's for real. It's not placebo. So, but yeah, gear, man, all the technicalities of it, there are experts on that, and I'm certainly not one of them. But I know we worked long and hard to sort of get a horn where I said, yeah, this horn wants to do what I want to do.
Yeah. Jim Manley.
Well, there's always a lot of talk of mouthpiece. If I get, especially guys that want to play, I should get a smaller mouthpiece. Well, it's not one size fits all. My approach is, I play a really small mouthpiece compared to a lot of people. It doesn't mean because a small mouthpiece, the sound has to be small. No, It's just what I grew up comfortable with. So I would say find something that you feel comfortable with and stick with it. Mainly by comfort, I mean the rim feels good on your lips. What feels good to me might not feel good to you. And you might buy a small mouthpiece and you're coming from a 3C. Well, I'm going to get a smaller mouthpiece to play high. It's not going to work because the little mouthpiece is not going to feel like a 3C. So if you're looking for that kind of switch, maybe get a 3 with a shallower cup, but maintain some kind of rim. You know, I got a lot of mouthpieces here, but they all basically have the same rim that I played on for many years. And I'll mess with backbores and cups just for different sounds because I like that. There's players I know play the same mouthpiece from high school and sound great on it. I'm just a guy that likes to experiment because the more efficient I get, it seems the smaller I can go, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Man, I try, especially with COVID, I got into a thing where I'd sell a horn, buy a horn, sell a horn, buy a horn, because you just don't know. I'll preface that by saying I had several Doc Severinsen Getsons. I didn't sound like Doc Severinsen. I had an MF horn. I didn't sound like Maynard, you know. But I like trying different horns, and I play a lot of different horns. Even on my recordings, I might want a certain sound or something. I usually fall into months at a time on a certain horn for whatever reason, and different gigs might require things. But really, I think it's fun to try different horns. Should you? No. Or it's not the horn that's going to make you sound better. That's the other thing. I can pretty much sound like me on any horn, good or bad. It's still me on whatever horn I pick up. But I really enjoy playing different horns. I get out of it. And there are horns that are better for me than others. Another guy, you know, I could come to your house and you could play my horn and go, good Lord, how do you play this thing? And you sound great on it. So it's always fun, man. I mean, for me, I've tried vintage horns up to modern horns. I just love playing horns. Currently, playing a 6310Z that literally was owned by my best friend many years ago when we both had them. And there's not many horns I haven't tried. Mouthpiece-wise, I'm playing a Mark Curry right now. Mark's great. He's made all kinds of different backbores and cups with the same rim. KO at Stomby, Jim New. I mean, just about everybody at some point I've gotten a mouthpiece from. For me, that's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, if you can do it, man, have fun with it.
The way I look at it is, look, if I sold this horn and I got this much of money, I can buy another horn and try it. There's always a market for horns out there, and there's always the newest horn that's going to make me play better. They usually don't, because I can pretty much suck on everything.
So yeah, you can if you're looking for a horn with a triple C pre-installed, talk to Jim Manley. He'll
I'll try to find one for you, but I haven't found one yet.
Mary Elizabeth Bowden.
I'll give you my backstory. So I think when I was a teenager, Carrie had me playing on a 2.5C, and I, you know, in my youth orchestra, Chicago Youth Symphony, you know, people were like, oh, the great players play a 1C. I mean, it's so silly. Right. And so I felt like a lot of pressure to play, like, I want to play a 1C. I can play that. And so she was so mad at me. I switched mouthpieces without asking her to the 1C. And I kind of refused to go to not do that. And she was like, oh my gosh, I have actually not talked about this with her. This is like back in like 1998. Sorry, Carrie, I didn't listen to you. And then, you know, throughout my journey through Curtis and everything, I stayed on like a ginormous mouthpiece. And at Curtis, there's only 4 trumpeters in the studio. And the player a year ahead of me, this fantastic player, Derek Lance, and he played like a 1C that was bored out 1,000 times. I don't know. And again, I wanted to be one of the guys. I wanted to show that I was strong. So I like ended up getting a very similar mouthpiece. And my teacher at the time, Dave Bilger, was like, yeah, that's fine. You can play that. I don't know. He was like kind of chill about it. You know, we didn't talk too much about it. He was like, yeah, you can play 1C. That seems okay. And I stuck with that for like many years until I met Jens Lindemann. And he was like, why are you playing that? I'm like, well, I'm not like an equipment person.
Right.
Like I've become more so with teaching, and, you know, I learn a lot from Dave and other people. And when I made the final live round for Ellsworth Smith, when I was 30, it was my last chance to try a competition. that's a whole nother story. I got hit in the face before the competition. It was very traumatic.
Ooh.
My career almost ended. But while preparing that summer and seeing that gigantic list of music that you have to play, like Jens was like, you're not going to get through this on that mouthpiece. There's a lot of problems on this mouthpiece. So I just started trying a bunch of random stuff. And I ended up settling on just a standard 5C. But I ordered like 5 of them, a Bach 5C, and they were all completely different.
Right.
So the one I have, I probably should copy because I really like it, but I don't know why it's different than the others.
Mm-hmm.
So I play that on my C and E flat, and on my B flat, I play a slightly modified 5C. It's a little bit bigger. They had it opened up just a little bit, and it seemed to be a better fit. So, that's what I play on the normal trumpets. I need to get it copied. I'd like to eventually find a mouthpiece maker that would work with me to see exactly what that 5C looks like and see if we can make some small adjustments. So that's probably gonna be my next step, is finding a company that I might want to work with. But I'm like pretty happy with the 5C that I found. So that's why I haven't like really pursued that. So, and then the piccolo, I play like really small. I play this picket brass. It's called Jens Lead 2. He had me try it for when I was learning Brandenburg, and I could play the higher notes, and it's like, okay, let's make this work. So I play that, but I also switch between a couple others. I'm in my older age, I've become a lot more flexible with being able to switch mouthpieces more, because on my solo shows, my solo recitals and Sarah Brass concerts, I have like 6 or 7 trumpets on stage, and I might even have a cornet with a cornet mouthpiece. So I'm always switching mouthpieces. And so again, we talk about versatility. In my mid-20s, that would have messed me up, and I would have been really nervous. Oh, I have to play piccolo cold. Now it's not a problem. You pick up the piccolo, it's cold, it's fine. Like you can do it if you train yourself to be flexible. So with my students, I see what they're playing, and I try to hear if there's any issues happening. I try to be mindful of it. And there's a couple of students this year where I'm having them try some different things. And seeing if that's a good fit. And since I know that I don't consider myself an expert on this, I can hear the sound and hear the issues. Like for me with the 1C, I used to have a flat high CNC trumpet, and I thought, oh, my range just isn't that great. That's not true. And I wish I had known that 10 years sooner. And same thing, I used to have, like, I recently tried my old mouthpiece that I used to play on in college, and all the weird things, like some scooping issues and things, they were all there again. And I was like, get this away. So with my students, I have a very flexible mind. And I have a friend in town in Winchester. He's a trumpeter named Bill Dunn. He plays in the Navy band, and he's a mouthpiece expert. And so I brought him in a couple of times as a guest artist to give me a second opinion. And I think that's also what I like about my teaching, is that I'm not like, you have to do this or else type of thinking. Like, if there's something a little bit outside my ballpark, like picking the perfect mouthpiece, I will bring in an expert to help with the student. Sometimes I can find the right mouthpiece for a student, and it's like, okay, that's sounding really good. But if I'm like a little unsure, I will bring in Bill, or Dave is a little bit more knowledgeable with the mouthpiece structures and stuff. So, but I'm learning as I go. I'm sure in a couple of years, I'll know a lot more than I know now. Yeah. So that's how I approach that stuff. And then with horns, if something's not working, I just play their trumpet, and I can kind of be like, yeah, you need to make some adjustments on this horn, or like, let's see if we can get you a different trumpet. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like that process. I feel like that's a little easier to manage, because I can just play the trumpet and, hear them kind of try some different things that I have in the office. And then once they try my trumpet or something, they can get a better sense of like, oh, okay, I need to look for something a little bit different, Yeah.
So. Chris Jaudes.
In terms of gear, and if you're comparing gear or trying to find the right equipment for something, number one, make sure that you're physically in the same place you were the last time you played, or normally when you play. If for instance, if you're trying out mouthpieces after you've been on vacation and haven't played for 2 weeks, you're not going to learn anything, and you can't find it. So number one, be physically ready to make a decision. So you're making sure that you're at your peak playing. And then the other thing is this, I think it's easy to begin to rely too much on mouthpieces, trumpets, extra stuff. I mean, I'm speaking to that, and I've got trumpets and mouthpieces laying all over my room here, but I basically have been through a bunch of mouthpieces, and literally within sight of me, there's about 300 mouthpieces here.
Nice.
But most of them are all gone, or, long past, haven't used them in years and years and years. And I let my students come and work on them. If they find one, they can take one, So number one, the real instrument is what's behind the mouthpiece. So all of that has got to be together. Your fingers, your chops, everything's got to be ready to do what you want to do. And then I always take a buddy when I try out equipment, somebody to stand in front of me who I trust as a player, and not only a player, but an excellent musician, and then play and say, okay, what was the difference between this one and that one, where you're at, and I think that's extremely helpful to us. I've also had some instruments that were made for me, and taking time with the people who make the instruments has been a great learning experience for me. And, because I've had them made for me, I can kind of always know how that's going to feel. And it tends to work for my skill set, whatever that is, lack of skill or enough skill, whatever it is, it's designed to either cover my mistakes or make it easier for me to play one way or the other. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of people tend to do that. That's why you can go out and get this guy's trumpet, or, the Wayne Bergeron trumpet, or the Marvin Stamm trumpet, or whatever. The thing is, if I buy Wayne's horn, that's not going to make me sound like Wayne. It might help, but still the instrument is what's behind the trumpet itself.
Right.
And so number one, that's got to be the thing. If you want to make something happen, you got to make all of this work well and work right. And then try out scientifically, not really, I don't know if it can be scientifically, but systematically, try out one thing at a time and see how that works. And then start to compare that with what you played before to see if that's going to make something different. Of all the trumpets I have, I like that I have some that are just different, not just the same, so that I can use that horn for this kind of playing and another horn for that kind of playing. But I think the main thing in terms of equipment that you choose, it doesn't do any good if you haven't played in 2 weeks. Trying out a trumpet is probably not yours, or making a decision on a trumpet is probably not the smartest thing to do at that point.
Yeah.
But I try out everything on mutes, mouthpieces, trumpets, valve tops. I know one guy who tries out, he has got to have some special kind of top cap on the valve. And it makes a big difference to him. To me, it doesn't really seem to matter, but it just depends on what matters to you. What do you need to do to be able to be consistent and have confidence in the equipment that you're playing? Think how much race car drivers go through every single inch of their car all the time. Now, we don't have the same sort of difficulties they do, but we kind of need to make sure it's always in good working order, that we're using the right equipment. I see that you have Robinson's Remedies there. Yeah. Every trumpet player I know has a bottle of that in their trumpet case. And that's a way to get this part of the instrument, your lips, working. Mm-hmm. And you can always know that if you feel a little swollen, okay, well, that's what you can use to make that happen. I'm not trying to do a commercial. I just saw that sticker on your stuff and thought, well, that's you're going to find one in every trumpet case you can find, because that gets the physical part, the body part, in the right place in case it's hurting, if it's not right.
Right. Well, actually, you did bring up something interesting there, and I've heard this argument, from so many different angles about the placebo effect, and okay, well, heavy caps, they help with the slotting and intonation. Well, no, heavy caps don't do anything, or heavy horns, heavy walls, all these different things. and of course, I have not seen. I'm a little bit of a geek. I am a geek. I don't want to say a little bit. I am a geek, but even more so than just the trumpet nerd geek. Just kind of a science geek in general. And I've actually asked a couple people who are manufacturers, and they're like, well, the science says this, and I'm like, okay, well, what science? What research? Can you show me the research? Because I don't have a problem sitting down and reading a journal article and looking at that sort of experimentation and deciphering that. But so some of the stuff I think, okay, well, there maybe is a quantifiable difference that it makes. And in some cases, it is simply a placebo effect. But the truth of the matter is that if you think it's going to help you to play better, you're probably going to play better. Simply because you're feeling more confident, you're feeling like the horn is going to respond for you the way that you want it to respond. So therefore, you don't set up that level of trepidation that's going to trip you up eventually. So where do you stand on things like that? About if it feels good for you, then it's good for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I'm trying out, it makes a big difference to me when I'm trying out the horn. If I'm looking for a new horn or something like that, I might say, do you have different caps on this to try? I personally feel like if you put enough weight on the trumpet, if you're using heavy caps on the bottom of your horn, I think it can change your sound. The question is it change it to a sound you want to hear, or a feel that you want to have, or not? I don't really like to have a lot of weight on the trumpet, and that doesn't work so well for me. And I don't have weights on my mouthpieces or anything else like that. They're just a standard cut. But that doesn't mean I disagree with them. I just haven't found one that I kind of feel like the more weight I have on it, the less control I have over what I'm playing. It's just more work to try to manipulate that extra weight into doing the things that it does, whatever that is. I've certainly played horns with heavy bills and with heavy caps. I have a Monet trumpet here that's real dark and heavy, and I like it for some things, but only because it's good for those things. It's not my everyday thing, but it certainly has. I'm sorry, it's not a Monet. It's. I don't mean to do that. It's like a Monet. It's what do we call this? A Van Laar.
Okay. Yeah.
And his stuff is very heavy, but it works on that horn. Now, I don't play lead trumpet on it. It's for a whole different sound. And I think it's a great idea to play around, just like race car drivers will work on bending a foil a certain way. They can feel it. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it made any difference if they won the race or if the people who are watching the race could tell that the car was faster, but for us, whatever works is a great thing. For me, I tend to go light on the trumpet. I'm heavy enough by myself. I don't need the trumpet to be any heavier. And I certainly feel like it's everybody's prerogative to say, I feel even if it's only in your mind, if a heavy cap makes you feel better about it, or if your horn is a special kind of color or shiny, if you feel better and it makes you play better, then great. That's fine. I don't try to make that many adjustments to what I do. I pick out a trumpet when I try it, and then for the most part, that's the way it stays. Every once in a while, I'll put a different mouthpiece in it, but that's to accomplish a different gig or a different quality sound.
Matt White.
Yeah, I think like for overall philosophy for me is like, I'm always trying to eliminate the instrument, if that makes any sense. And so, I want to be able to, whether like it's something I have to read off a page or something I have to hear, or it's something I'm improvising, like I don't want to think about the trumpet. Like I want to be connected to the music. And so for me, the gear is a way to get to that point so that it feels good. And maybe I'm getting the sound that I want to hear. Because if it's a pleasant sound, it's a sound I like, I'm more apt to forget about the trumpet. It's like, okay, everything's dialed in the way that I want. So right now I'm playing, and I know you had him on the show recently. I'm playing a Venture mouthpiece.
Yes, sir.
That Doug made for me, which is like kind of like a hybrid of a bunch of things. It's like a 7 rim that I really love, but then like the drop is from a 3C, and then the cup shape is different. And really for me, it was just getting something that was like slightly more efficient that let me kind of keep the horn on my face for long periods of time and still be to execute the things that I want to play. A lot of times when I improvise, I like moving around a lot. I like playing really angular ideas. And so being super comfortable is part of that. I'm also like a big fan of Patrick Mouthpieces, Steve. Steve is a great friend and somebody I worked with a lot when I lived in Nashville. So I still play his gear a little bit, but yeah, this Venture mouthpiece that Doug made for me is like amazing. And I would say for anybody that has like a piece of gear that you love, but you're always like, oh, I would just change this one thing about it. Like he's the person to talk to because he can change that one little thing about it. For B flat, I play 2 B flat trumpets. Both of them are New York box. They're super old box. I play one that's like a large bore with a 25 bell and a 6 lead pipe. That's primarily like this horn that I do like all my improvising on. And then I play another New York box that's a medium bore with a 38 bell and a Charlie Melk lead pipe. And that's like pretty much everything else. So like lead playing, any commercial stuff, even classical playing I do on that. Flugelhorn, I play an Adams F5, which is the copper one, and it's super pretty sounding, which is why I love it. And then piccolo trumpet, I play a Bach Artisan piccolo trumpet. And then I guess in terms of like what I tell my students, I think the first thing is like, does this feel okay? Right. So like if you're playing a mouthpiece that feels bad or hurts you, like let's switch it. Let's figure something out. I'm definitely not one of those people that comes in and is like, everybody must play in a 3C or everybody must play in a 1C with like a 25 throat. Like everybody's a little different. And so ultimately I want to make sure that they have something that feels really great, lets them get the sound they want, and then is also, you know, not a drag to play. Because I think for all of us, we're always kind of trying to balance that like playability and then the sound that we want. So just directing students, and because of that, I like never have mouthpieces because I'm always giving mouthpieces to students. So it's like the other day I was like, oh, I wonder what a 3C would feel like because I hadn't played one in a lot, and I realized like I'd given like 4 3Cs to all my students. So so yeah, that's kind of I think my philosophy on gear.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's there's a point there I just wanted to ask you about, because, you know, we all have our defaults. And I think the two poles that we tend to go on with gear, like especially like mouthpieces, one is the comfort, you know, how does it feel? And the other is the sound, you know. And like you said, there's a kind of a balancing act that you have to work with. But like for yourself, are you more of a, you know, I got to start with a feel and then start playing with the sound, or is it I got to go with the sound and then see if I can adjust it to make the feel work?
I think it's the sound part for me first, because I think that going back to what we were saying earlier, I think that if it's the sound that I hear in my head and I feel like I'm getting to it, like that's the thing that keeps me like the most engaged. I will say, like, as I've gotten older, I feel like efficiencies become really important to me. And you know, it's just because like I'm older, like I got 2 kids, I got stuff I got to do. So like when you're in school, when you're going to school and like you can practice 5 hours a day, big equipment feels amazing, right? Because you're getting all that time on your chops and you're like playing a lot. As you get older and you get like less practice time, I think like the efficiency thing got really important to me. And so I've found over the years, like my equipment's kind of gotten smaller, and I've learned to kind of let the resistance work for me a little more, as opposed to like feeling like I was like having to overpower the instrument. So yeah, I mean, I think that kind of feels that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's, I think, one of those things that, you know, as we were talking about earlier, that isn't really talked about a lot, you know, in a formal kind of setting, you know, like, you know, that'd actually be an interesting class on, you know, how to play test gear, you know,
yeah,
what things to look for, you know, like mouthpiece design, horn design, things like that. I think that would be a really interesting, class to
because
maybe.
you know I've been an ITG member for like a long time, but I went to my first one in 2019, the one in Miami, and I was judging the jazz competition, and but yeah, like you know, going in there, and I was so excited to try out all the horns, you know, because I was like, I've never been to one of these things. I get to try all these horns and mouthpieces. Like, wait a second, this is the worst possible environment for me to actually figure out if I need to change something.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and also, I mean, I think that people don't know how to actually test.
Yeah.
Roger, you mentioned Roger Ingram earlier. I think Roger's done a couple of little posts or videos. I can't remember if he's done a video. I know he's done a couple posts about that, about the process that he recommends people to do for trying out a horn. It's like, this is what you should do. Don't go in there and just, try to play as loud as you can or as high as you can. These are the steps you should take. And I think somebody to codify that to a degree, everybody's going to be different, obviously, but maybe someone out there in Trumpet Gurus land will want to take up that project, and as long as I get my residual for that,
that's right.
Please do that.
That finder's fee.
Yeah, no finders. But yeah, I mean, I think that's something that would be so useful. I mean, if I think back to my my earlier years, it would have saved me a whole lot of time and a whole lot of money to be able to know how to systematically go about picking the right gear.
Yeah. And just like also like going into it and going like, what is it that I need to change? Right. Because if you go into the situation just going like, I need to find something that makes me play better, like that's pretty fraught with problems right there. So yeah, having an idea of like what it is that I'm actually looking for, what do I need to make better?
Allen Vizzutti.
I mean, I guess the question was kind of why am I drawn to, or what am I looking for?
Yeah.
Well, there's ease of tone production. In other words, too much resistance or too open is not going to work for me. That's basically kind of bore size. And so you have a lot of choices there. Sound quality and harmonic structure is huge. When we talk about the Vizzutti model, I did grab a Bach trumpet from a student of mine and take it to New York because I liked the sound on it. Kind of typical Bach sound, kind of buttery and nice. And within an hour and a half of working on the new horn, when I would test the two horns for people coming in and out of the facility in New York City, which one do you like better? Everybody picked the Yamaha, sound-wise. So for whatever description, I feel like we kind of built the harmonic structure with the mouthpieces is a huge part of this, by the way, but the harmonic structure of the sound I was getting was much more broad and warm. My tendency too is not to go for sizzle. I have enough of that in what I do and with my equipment. My tendency is to go for a horn that has a pushing, and I use this with quotation marks, but darker. It's not going to be dead kind of heavy metal, the trumpet made by the Hummer Corporation.
Yeah.
Lead weight dead. It's going to be just not as dark as some of the horns with a mouthpiece that's medium to small, for instance. And I go for sound a lot. And then if I get really specific, what I like to check is the intonation in the middle register, for instance. If a D in the staff is flat, you need to rethink because you can't fix that. The scale's good, very close. Of course, our low C sharp and D are going to be sharp. But above high C, if it doesn't close off on me or too much with the resistance that I am comfortable with, which is not a measurable quantity, it's by feel. And the new horn accomplishes a more open upper register, let's say from high C to a 4 line G written. And those are kind of my priorities, basically sound and then the resistance or balanced resistance feel. The construction quality is what it is, plus it's high class with the Yamaha. I've been to Japan 49 times and the factory a bunch of times. And I've been to factories in China, brass factories in China, for instance. Yamaha's factory is pretty shockingly amazing.
Yeah.
And clean and efficient. And yes, they're in it for the money. Yes, they make great student horns and a lot of them. But they don't cut a lot of corners where they could cut some corners because they want it to be high quality and last.
Yeah. Well, and what you said about the D being in tune, I've never heard that, and that's a great point. And that's kind of the reason why I want to ask these kind of questions to players is because, there are so many people that are looking for new gear or having problems with the gear they have, and trying to get ideas on how to actually evaluate, and what makes a horn. Obviously, there's always the feel, the personal preferences and stuff like that. But if you're trying something out, what are your baselines? What are the like the top 3 things that you should do to test a horn to see that this is something that's going to be workable, besides what finish it has, So thank you for that point. I think that's something to add to the arsenal.
There were some old bench trumpets because I had during university years I played bench for a while, and on the road I was playing a bench with Woody Herman's band, and the D in the staff was flat, and I struggled with that. It made you tired,
Yeah.
So if we move on a little bit quickly to the mouthpiece, I have worked on a mouthpiece design just periodically over many years. When I went on the road with Woody Herman, I didn't want to play a pea shooter, but I wanted to go a little smaller than my more classical gear from school time. And I didn't really have a specific mouthpiece in mind, but long story short is I came up with a design that's very middle of the road. And by came up with it was through experimentation, having mouthpieces made in New York and Chicago at Schilke and at Giardinelli and Pepper, a guy that used to be in Manhattan a long time ago. Just having them make stuff and try them, and most of them just ended up in a box somewhere, not useful for me. And then when I found something that was sort of, the diameter is halfway between a Bach 3 and a 5, so Bach doesn't make a 4, but it would be like a 4. And the cup is on the medium to shallow side, but it's a bowl shape, not a V. And I would have that copied periodically. And so what happened was, manufactured, when I was traveling, I could go at different cities, I would have it copied or do it by mail. And well, you couldn't really copy it by mail, come to think of it. So I had to be there. And sometimes the mouthpiece played a little easier. I didn't know why, but they had different, each manufacturer had different tools, different blanks, different shapes on the outside, different,
Right.
There was those Jet Tone and the Schilke and the Bach and the Bob Reeves. They all were shaped differently. Joe Marcinkiewicz, et cetera, et cetera. And they played differently. And I would just switch immediately to the one that worked best. Now, this wasn't very often. This is months or years apart. And it led me to a Yamaha mouthpiece that I could play now and be happy to play now. And it's for sale. Just if you ever need a point of reference and a friend has one, you can see what it's about. It's a little small for a lot of people, but for some reason I can play smaller mouthpieces a little more classically than some other people. I do struggle with big mouthpieces and think that a lot of time they're too inefficient for everyone. The 1 1/4 C is not really a great mouthpiece for most people, I don't think. I just say that to say that I do have struggled with those mouthpieces, and the sound that I get is not beautiful either. So I'm somewhere in the middle there. And I play Peter Pickett mouthpieces now. He took my Yamaha mouthpiece and copied it, and whatever difference is, it's a little easier to play for me. As I mentioned, if the mouthpiece by Yamaha is still out there and for sale, and if you got one, don't worry about it. It's a really nice mouthpiece. And I'm not saying that the Pickett one would be better, but for me, it was a little easier to play. Now, when I say easier, basically I'm talking above high C. When you test a mouthpiece, check your range, whatever your range is. If it's, let's just use high C as an example. If it's comfortable playing from your low F sharp to your high C, I don't mean in one scale necessarily, but as far as resistance and the mouthpiece speaking, and you like the sound, that's a great mouthpiece for you. It's a great starting point. One other sentence, get the right, use the, you need, let me restate that. You need the right sound for the job. So you're gonna have to have a balance between the sound that you love and the most playing that you do.
Yeah.
If you like really dark bebop, foo-foo, smoky blue room sound, it's probably not gonna work on first trumpet in an orchestra or first trumpet in a big band or in a salsa band. Logic and intelligence and, reason there. Get the right sound for the job and follow your heart there too.
Yeah, well, those are certainly great tips. The sound the sound has to drive it. So
yeah, definitely. And don't forget, the people don't care what your gear is. They care what you sound like, and they care if they had enjoyment and were moved emotionally. That's all they care about.
Yeah, the only people that seem to care about it are the other trumpet players. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're certainly not paying your bills, so.
Well, as a side note, for players who wonder, I do switch mouthpieces for some sounds sometimes. I do switch horns a little bit for, say, playing bebop versus some other sort of big band situation where I'm out in front at a college, university, or something like that. I do switch sometimes for certain pieces, usually not too much. In recitals, I switch a lot, instruments and just a couple of mouthpieces. I don't have that many, but for the sound and for the right characteristic for the music.
Yeah.
Well, as close as you can get.
Yeah. Well, I don't know where that came from. It's almost like this kind of macho thing of, I use one horn and one mouthpiece to do everything, and I use the biggest gear possible, and
yeah, that's really old school. I don't know what that's about either. I mean, I can see the challenge of trying to be a hero of some kind, but I'm a little baffled by that myself.
Yeah, well, Allen says it's okay, and to back off. Well, that wraps up this special episode. I hope that you enjoyed it, and more importantly, I hope that you learned something that you'll find extremely useful. Please make sure you subscribe, like, and share, and do me a huge favor. Please support our geared up sponsor, Venture Mouthpieces, as well as my other segment sponsors, Barkley Microphones, providing you world-class microphones on a working class budget, and Robinson's Remedies, products to repair and renew your chops. So thanks for joining me, and thank you for your support in growing the Trumpet Gurus Hang. I promise to do my best to continue bringing you great conversations with the best and brightest that the trumpet world has to offer. And as always, peace and slide grease. We out. Thanks for hanging with us today. This podcast is all about creating deeper connections through our mutual love of music and the trumpet life. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast and also like and share this episode with a friend. We want to see the Hang grow for show. Please support our sponsors and consider becoming a personal supporter of this podcast as well. Remember, for less than the price of a bottle of valve oil a month, you can keep this podcast moving smoothly. The Trumpet Gurus Hang is recorded at the Candy Factory, a co-working space and social club located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Jose Johnson is the executive producer. Post-production editing is by Mitch Bowers. Our opening theme song was composed and performed by Lexi Signor, and our closing theme music comes courtesy of The Greatest Funeral Ever. Incidental music is by Ethan Swayze and Jose Johnson. Graphic design by Ann Kirby of the Sweet Corps. The Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast is produced in collaboration with the So Good Lancaster Media Group.